with we are also here with Thomas Weisberg from ICDP, and also Layla. Let's see, is Layla here? Yeah, Layla Rezi, who is the part of ICDP support staff. So we're here to just give you a kind of a two-part walk through the proposal process for ICDP. So maybe the next slide.
Yeah, I try. Here we go.
So the purpose of this workshop is for everyone who participates in ICDP to familiarize people with workshop proposal preparation, and also to answer your questions. So if you do have a question, please use the chat function to put it into the chat, and we will go through those questions. During the Q&A, you just have to raise your hand and we'll call on you. Next slide.
Okay, that would be me. So also from my side, very warm welcome to this workshop. My name is Thomas Wiersberg, and I'm with the ICDP Operational Support Group, and I'm speaking about the structure of ICDP and what the Operational Support Group is in a minute. Starting with ICDP in a nutshell, what is ICDP? Well, ICDP, the International Continental Scientific Drilling Program, is an international organization to support multinational research teams with a critical need for deep continental scientific drilling. And this support is, on the one hand, a financial support. So we provide funding for drilling projects, but it includes also support in the field of logistics, in the field of infrastructure, know-how, training, services. So we are a funding agency, but we are more than that. And multinational research teams, they can request from ICDP this support, but it's based on proposals. So scientists from member countries are invited to submit proposals to ICDP. These proposals will be evaluated, and they should also be in line with our science plan. More about that in a minute. And also should be of far-reaching societal relevance. And the ICDP member countries you see here on the right side, and our newest member is Australia. Australia joined ICDP this year. So we have currently 22 member countries and the UNESCO as affiliated member. The ICDP achievements in 28 years. So ICDP was funded in 1996. I mentioned already the 22 member countries plus UNESCO. You see them here on the world map here, marked green. And we have more than 60 drilling projects funded and supported. These projects have produced more than 100 kilometers of drill core. We have supported more than 80 workshops which have been held, more than 20 training courses, and way more than 1,000 peer-reviewed papers have been published from ICDP projects. And what you see here on the map is color-coded, and each dot represents an ICDP project. And you see the different colors here. In black, geo-resources, in blue, the geohazards, in pink, the paleoclimate, and in green, the geodynamics. About the ICDP structure in general, we have on the one hand the three panels: the Science Advisory Group, the Executive Committee, and the Assembly of Governors. You see them on the left side, who are mostly dealing with the proposals and also with the strategy of ICDP. I'm getting a little bit more in detail in a minute. Just for now, you should consider or should remember that SAC, EC, and AOG, they are mainly dealing with your proposals. They are reading your proposals and they will decide about your proposals. What you see on the right side are those ICDP bodies who are in charge of implementation and helping you with drilling operations. That's on the one hand, Marco Bonhoff, our executive director. He is the representative of ICDP for the daily representation. He's doing the negotiation and contracting on behalf of ICDP. And then there is the operational support group, the OSG, and they are providing operational and logistical support. Also more about that in a minute. And on the very right side, you see the GFC, the German Research Center for Geosciences, which is the executive agency of ICDP, because they are responsible for all the legal matters and they act on behalf of ICDP and the ICDP members. And they also administer the ICDP budget. The 6 elements of ICDP, and you see on this slide also a little bit how the proposals are handled. The proposals coming from the science community, in the first step, they were submitted to the Science Advisory Group, the SAG. And we are happy having here Lisa, Steve, and Sherry with us. Lisa was for 7 years the SAG chair. She did a great job, and she will rotate out by the end of the year. And then Steve will take over as the new SAG chair, and Sherry will be the vice chair. The SAG reads your proposal mainly from a scientific viewpoint. And they give recommendations to the EC, the Executive Committee, and the EC then, based on the recommendations of the SAG plus their own impression, they, for workshop proposals, decide about the proposals. And for full proposals, they give recommendations to the next body, which is the Assembly of Governors, the AOG. And the AOG decides on budgets and on full proposals. And once a proposal has been accepted by the Assembly of Governors, a drilling proposal has been accepted by the Assembly of Governors, and the funding is in place, and we have to speak about money also. The complete funding is in place, then that's the point where the operational support group comes into play to help you implementing your drilling project. Well, speaking about funding, the ICDP does not fully fund your project. They provide, or we provide, what we call seed funding. So we provide money, some money, that helps you to raise additional money from other funding agencies. So in some way, the ICDP funding is a door opener to help you get money from other funding agencies. And this concept has been proven in the last years to be very successful. You see here the average ICDP contribution to total operational costs, and they range between 5% and 70%, with about 20% in average. You see on the left side this diagram here, the plot, where you see the ICDP share in percent on the y-axis versus the total project budget on the x-axis. And you see that very expensive projects, more than 10 or $15 million budget, you see that the ICDP share is lower than or less than, let's say, 15 or maybe even 10% or so. But it's often higher with projects which are not that expensive. When you consider that the ICDP budget the money that we are providing for drilling and also for workshops, is created by the ICDP membership fee. So each country that is an ICDP member provides a membership fee, and that creates the ICDP budget. And this budget is per year in the range of about $4 million. And more than 90% is spent to support drilling projects or workshops. And if you now consider that an average 3 drilling projects and 4 workshops are funded per year, you can easily calculate how much money we generally spend for a project. There is no upper limit that you can request in an ICDP proposal to fund your project by ICDP, but so far the limit that was provided by ICDP was in a range of $1.6 million per year or project phase. There's also no lower limit, but so far no project requested less than $200,000. So we are in this range between, let's say, 200,000 and 1.6 million. If you request money from ICDP in your proposal, you should know that ICDP, or the money that you request from ICDP, aims to cover operational costs like preparation of drill sites, drilling itself, logging, transportation, mobilization, demobilization, outreach, these things. ICDP does not fund pre-site surveys. ICDP does not fund any overhead costs. And ICDP does not provide any funding for science, which includes also expenditures of scientific personnel. If you need new tools for doing research linked to a new ICDP project, you need to reach out to other funding agencies. So this can be requested from national and international funding agencies and programs, and maybe even the industry. That's not something that ICDP can support. I mentioned already these ICDP proposals often serve as door opener for funding agencies. And it's even the case that several funding agencies, they request an approved ICDP proposal before they provide additional funding for drilling. I note from Germany, the German Research Foundation has a priority program designated to ICDP in order to support science, but also provide additional drilling funds for ICDP projects. But they will only open their pocket once ICDP has approved the project. So they want to see the approval from ICDP first before they may consider to provide you additional funding for drilling. And with this concept, ICDP has invested in this 28 years of existence now more than $60 million in more than 60 projects. So you can easily calculate the average amount. And matching funds were raised in the range of more than $220 million by various third-party funding sources. That's about the funding. And now about the operation support, the other big element in the support and funding strategy of ICDP, the way how we support ICDP projects. The operational support group is a team of experts that helps research teams in the planning, realization, and implementation of continental scientific drilling projects. We have a drilling engineer with us. We have people who are experts in borehole investigations and downhole logging. We have people with us doing data and sample management. We're also dealing with grant agreements and doing also financial things related to drilling projects. And we have an education and outreach. And I'm going a little bit more detail with the next slide here. because that can also become important for you when you submit a proposal. So OSG management, we are in charge of preparation of grant agreements, for instance. We provide authorized funds, and we also help you organizing ICDP workshops. That's the team of me, of Laila, of Uli, and of Ines. Our drilling engineer, he can help when it comes to well planning and well design. He can also provide on-site support. And whenever you're dealing with drilling companies, maybe if you ask for a bid or if you're already drilling and need some advice, he's the right one to ask and to ask. For the data and sample management, that's Cindy, Katja, and Knut. They are experts in handling data and samples, so they can provide a data platform. They can provide also equipment, and they are also running the MDIS, the Drilling Information System. And they will also provide training on this one, because this is something we provide for projects, but it's not that we operate it. So we give training on this MDIS, but once it comes to drilling, it's project scientists or project scientists are in charge of the MDIS. Of course, with our support and help in the background, but the MDIS is then operated by the project scientists. The downhole logging, that's a little bit different, because for the downhole logging, we provide complete service, including, well, bringing the equipment, doing the downhole logging for you, and depending on how much you want to get involved, involve the ICDP operational support group in your data interpretation, we can also provide you a preliminary data interpretation or even a deep scientific interpretation. And for the education and training, that was my task for almost 14 years. We can help you to, let's say, design an outreach program. We can help you with training and capacity building. And currently, this is in the hand of Ursula. There will be a new outreach and training coordinator will be starting in 1st of December. I mentioned this a little bit in detail because when you submit a full proposal to ICDP, aspects like a budget and a management plan, a drilling plan, a risk matrix, a plan for health, safety, and environment, a data and sample management plan, a logging plan, and an outreach plan have to be included in your proposal. And here you can rely on the expertise of the operational support. Contact us. We can help. Contact us in advance. And if you plan to submit a full proposal by the January 15 deadline, speaking about deadlines in a minute, please contact us not later than, let's say, mid-November or something like that. Give us a little bit of time to read your proposal, and then we will organize a Zoom meeting, and then we can discuss about your proposal and our impression about your proposal. We, the OSG, will read your proposal in any case, because once you submitted it, we also will read your proposal with this operational and from this operational viewpoint. So there are 3 different types of proposals: the pre-proposal, the workshop proposal, and the full proposal. There are some other proposal types, but in general, these are the main proposal types. The pre-proposal that lays out a scientific idea that you would like to address by continental scientific drilling. This proposal is evaluated by the Science Advisory Group, and they decide if you should go for the next step, which would be submitting of a workshop proposal. And if you get a positive feedback on your pre-proposal by the Science Advisory Group, and you're invited to submit a workshop proposal, then this workshop proposal will again be reviewed by the Science Advisory Group. and they give a recommendation and forwarded it to the executive committee, the EC, and they finally decide about your workshop proposal. And if your workshop proposal is accepted, you will receive, or you have requested in your proposal money to hold a workshop. And once you have held the workshop, then the next step would be to submit a full proposal, a drilling proposal. And this drilling proposal, again, will be reviewed by the science advisory group. They give a recommendation to the executive committee, and they will give a recommendation to the Assembly of Governors on your proposal, and they, at the end, decide about your proposal, the drilling proposal. And once they approve your drilling proposal, then you can request money from ICDP. You have already requested that money in your proposal, but once it's approved, we can start, let's say, the funding process. Thinking about grant agreements and things like that. These three panels in ICDP, the Science Advisory Group, the EC, and the Assembly of Governors, of course, they are reading your proposal from a little bit different viewpoint. With the Science Advisory Group, I mentioned already that they, hold on, here's something wrong, that they have a focus on the science. So they read mainly from your proposal, of course, the body text, all the science that is included. They read carefully also, let's say, the CVs of the proponents and these things. The executive committee, they are more interested, they're also interested in the science, but they are more interested in management and operational aspects like budget, like logistics, like technique, people, and also a little bit the science. And last, Assembly of Governors, they have more the strategic view, and they read your proposal more from a strategic viewpoint. So they probably, because they're not necessarily experts in your respective field of research, they probably read the abstract and see the figures and things like that. And at the end, the decision will be made based on the decisions of these panels, of these gremia. It does not really work, it should. Anyway, this is what we call the ICDP Proposal Summit. It may take a while from first submission of a pre-proposal until you see the whole bit rotating. And I mentioned already the deadline for proposal submission, which is January 15. So you would start a pre-proposal on January 15. In case you get positive feedback from the science advisory group, you can the next year submit a workshop proposal. And then in case you get another positive feedback from the EC, you can hold the workshop. And based on the workshop and the output of the workshop, you can create your full proposal. And in the very best case, that can be done in the next year. And then the decision always takes about 3 to 5 or 6 months from ICDP. Then you can, after you receive your feedback for the full proposal, you can start to look for additional funding. And that's what often is the most time-consuming steps. You can see it here. And once you have the funding in place, you can start the operational phase, you can start the drilling. You can see here on the x-axis that can easily take several years. And in the best case, it's something like 4.5 years, something like that. But it can also take 10 years. That happens also in the past. I think an average is something like 5 years or so, 5 to 6 years. But again, the most time-consuming step is not in our hand, because that's the raising of the matching funds by other funding agencies. And ICDP is science-driven, and the science from which we think this is relevant in the next decade for ICDP projects, that's written in the science plan, and that's this document here, which is also online available. Yeah, hold on, focus here. And it's also online available, and I will also show you later the link to this document. And because we are now going in the direction of science, Lisa, do you want to take over and speak about the scientific aspects in ICDP?
Absolutely. And thank you, Thomas. First, I want to pause here and ask if there's any questions from our participants. So you can either just raise your hand. We have a small group here, so you can just speak if you want to. Any questions? Okay, for those that joined late, I'm Lisa Park-Bausch. I'm the outgoing chair of the Scientific Advisory Group. And so our group are about 19 members from all different types of disciplines. And we meet once a year to review all proposals that come into ICDP. And that includes the ones that Thomas talked about, the pre-proposals, the workshop proposals, and the full proposals. Now, all of this actually, the proposal process actually starts with the science. And so ICDP, if you've not familiarized yourself with this, it's a very accessible document. Meaning that it's highly readable, but it's also on the ICDP website. All you have to do is Google ICDP Science Plan and download it. And this is the result of multiple people's work in a process that happened prior to 2020. So this is for the next decade. So this is 2020 to 2030. And here you can see it's kind of encapsulated in this cartoon of all the different processes that happen within and on Earth's surface. So this means that ICDP is interested in all of sort of Earth and Earth's evolution, as well as Earth's system processes. Next one. And so there's 4 different areas that have been identified in the science plan: geodynamic processes, georesources, geohazards, and environmental change. And these key themes are also linked to societal challenges. So these are really important aspects of your proposal to think about. Why does this science need to be done? What compelling questions are being addressed? And also, what relevance does it have to society in terms of water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, sustainability, and mitigation of natural hazards, and of course, climate change? So keep these in mind in the lens of your proposal development as you're thinking about the big ideas you're trying to address. Next one, please. So just briefly to go through the different aspects, environmental change incorporates how sedimentary archives tell us about the changing Earth. So things like greenhouse states, so greenhouse to icehouse conditions and how they change through time. What's the impact on the hydrologic cycle? Looking at the biosphere and biochemical fluxes and carbon cycling, and even hominid dispersal and how climate change might have impacted hominid evolution, for example. Next one. Within geodynamic processes, this is looking at how processes shaped our planet. So looking at tectonics and crustal and mantle evolution through time, looking at hydrosphere, atmosphere, and biosphere system integration and links, looking also at early life, how life originated on Earth. We've had several very successful drilling projects focused around those themes. Next slide. Geohazards, obviously extremely important for so many people on our planet. So looking at earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, mass movements like landslides, and looking at a better way to quantitatively understand these physical processes and looking at how to mitigate some of these risks associated with these types of hazards. Next one. And then our final one, and this is one that we have a special strategy paper that we'll be talking about a little bit later. That has to do with geothermal and georesources. So geothermal energy, obviously a big target for continental drilling. However, in recent years, we had a workshop that helped define what ICDP actually wants to support within geothermal energy. Since some of it is so applied, we actually want to focus on the science of geothermal energy. So those types of questions could involve carbon storage. It could understand how geothermal energy might relate to urban environments, for example. But also within the georesources theme, also critical minerals is part of that, as well as future water resources. So sort of those key elements are part of what we consider georesources. Next slide. I mentioned these strategy papers, so we are about to release the lake drilling strategy paper that you can see on your right. This has not yet been released. It's in review right now, but I'm going to go through some key elements related to it. And I mentioned before the geothermal strategy paper, which is on your left, that is currently available from the ICDP website in a PDF format. And if you attend AGU or EGU, these are available in a nice glossy, if you like paper, a nice glossy format as well. Next slide. So the lake drilling strategy, as I mentioned before, is being developed. We were asked to do this through the executive committee. So as Thomas mentioned, we have basically 3 different levels of organization for ICDP. We have SAG, which is what I'm a member of, and Steve and Sherry are members of. And then there's the executive committee, which looks at the decisions of SAG and decides on resource allocation for the different proposals that have been reviewed. And then the Assembly of Governors, which is the upper level. So we were asked by the EC, the executive committee, to put together some kind of drilling strategy for lakes. We assembled a task force that included myself, Steve Hasselbold, and Modi Stein, Roki Kipfer, and Vicky Pease. The last 3 are from the EC. We met over the summer, many meetings to discuss lake drilling strategy. And we came up with a plan and a prioritization that would focus on things like world-class science, world-class sites, and world-class opportunities, which all ICDP proposals should focus on. But in this case, we're mainly concerned with Neogene and Quaternary lake drilling projects. So knowing that there are also some deeper time lake drilling projects in deep time, these don't necessarily apply to this strategy. Next slide. So just to give you an idea of the portfolio of our lake drilling efforts within ICDP, on the left, you can see lakes and lacustrine systems that have been drilled within ICDP. So quite a number of them, everything from Lake Baikal to Lake E, Lake Malawi, the Dead Sea, the Chaco Basin, and then our most recent is Lake Namco in the Himalayas. In development, you can see the projects on the right. So there's quite a number that are at various different phases of drilling. Some are just at the workshop phase. Some are in the sort of pre-drilling phase, trying to get commingled funds. So you can see all those things that are sort of in the pipeline. And so EC wanted us to come up with a strategy for this community so that they can be coordinated in some cases, and that they can also make compelling cases um, uh, for prioritization of certain target areas. Next slide. And this is just what it looks like globally. You can see we have a global coverage of different completed projects and also potential projects. Next slide. And then this is where we really had some conceptual thinking around what might be the prioritization of lake drilling going forward within the Neogene and Quaternary. So realizing that there's knowledge gaps in different ways, both spatially, temporally, and also within record resolution and continuity. These are the three areas in which we hope to prioritize future drilling of lake basins. And so you can see time is on the upper axis, so Holocene through Miocene, and then these prioritization things in terms of latitude, longitude, altitude. These are spatial gaps within our current record coverage. Also temporal gaps, where are we missing records, and resolution, which is at the bottom, recognizing that some records are not complete, nor can they actually provide records of high resolution that you can get seasonal data from. And so the prioritization is basically for our longer records, our older records, Miocene and Pliocene, in all aspects. So if you have a Holocene record or a Pleistocene record that you want to drill, you need to make a very strong case as to why this particular record might be really important for the overall understanding of Earth's history and hopefully future forecasting of things like climate. Next slide. Within the African lake community, so notice that this is a map of all the current and future projects and past projects within the East African Rift System. I should share personally that I come from this community, so I'm involved in the Lake Tanganyika drilling project and also the Lake Malawi project. So, so this record is highly patchy. We recognize that, but we have had a lot of records drilled within the East African Rift. So to prioritize projects in Africa, for example, we're looking for things that have perhaps combined hydrology and ecosystem questions of response, looking at latitudinal gradients that might have critical intervals that might need to be addressed, the paleohydrology and temperature records that might be related to greenhouse gases and orbital drivers, and also integrating these lake records and any kind of model experiments that might be important for interpreting biogeographic systems history. And then finally, looking at implications for some of these paleo records and any type of modeling for future climate forecasting. So if you can tie these type of projects into your project development strategy for your East African lake, those types of things would be looked on more favorably by ICDP. Next slide.
Now about the geothermal proposals.
Correct. So this geothermal, so I'm going to switch gears here and talk about the geothermal proposal strategy. Again, this came out of a workshop that was a two-phase workshop. We had an online workshop in May of 2022, and then also in August, September of 2022, and we came up with this strategy. And it kind of revolves around these four different areas. So monitoring, simulation, technology challenges, and new horizons. So in terms of monitoring, looking at high resolution, long-term in situ observations on rock and fluid parameters, stress, strain, and so forth. Simulation, addressing the needs of modeling to eliminate complex coupled processes using high quality data. Technological challenges that require development of monitoring, sampling, integrity, looking at hostile conditions over extended time periods, and then finally the New Horizons component, looking at new pathways, particularly with respect to things like ultra deep drilling. Next slide. So with respect to geothermal, the main categories are supercritical and high temperature, ultra high temperature systems, enhanced geothermal systems, and low to mid enthalpy geothermal systems. So these are sort of self-explanatory, but the supercritical ultra high temperature systems, these are supposed to be those that are not so far operational, but seen as a very high risk, high gain opportunity. There's a lot of knowledge gaps and investments in technological development that are needed for these supercritical ultra high temperature systems. So we would like to partner with projects, piggyback projects with respect to this type of opportunity. The second one is enhanced geothermal system, which in most cases are either not operational or economically profitable. There could be some knowledge gaps as to why this is and how it could be made profitable and more applicable in different systems. And then the final one, the low to mid enthalpy system. Sometimes these are operational and economically feasible, but there may not be that much scientific knowledge gaps, but there might be some real important opportunities, for example, in urban settings where you have a high risk of induced seismicity. How is that monitored? How is that integral to these project successes? And also societal acceptance. So next slide.
Sorry.
There's a matrix here as well. It might not be easy to read, but the ultra high temperature, deep enhanced geothermal, and low enthalpy systems are up on the top. And then those four different things that I mentioned before, the monitoring, the simulation, the technological challenges, and the new horizons are on the left-hand side. And just like the drilling strategy, there's sort of these bubbles of interest in terms of ICDP funding. So the bigger the bubble, the more relevant it is, we think, to ICDP support. Next slide.
So it's now about the proposal types. Shall I continue?
I'm stop here and see if there's any questions. And you can put them in the chat. Any questions?
Yeah, hi, hello, Stefan here.
Sure.
I just got a question quickly regarding the pre-proposal. I mean, I guess you're going to talk about this as well here, but I was just wondering something how detailed those pre-proposals need to be.
Yeah, so that's our next section.
Sure.
What I will say is they are evaluated slightly differently than workshop proposals, and that you're not expected to have a fully detailed plan like you would in a workshop proposal, but you need to have a plan enough so that the SAG, the Scientific Advisory Group evaluating it, can see what the major questions are, how you plan to put together a workshop, and hopefully a full drilling proposal for the future. So maybe Steve and Sherry might have a comment on that, and then I'll go forward and talk about these different proposal types.
Yeah, so what I would say is that really the pre-proposal needs to have enough detail to make a convincing case that there is potential for a good project there.
Yeah.
So it's not ticking lots of very specific boxes, but it's articulating the argument for why drilling at a particular location could answer particularly strong science questions, and that technically it would be feasible.
Yeah. And the trick, and I will say this just from 7 years on SAG, the trick is that we review first the full proposals, and then we review the workshop proposals, and then we review the pre-proposals. So good or bad, that's the way we do it. And so by the time we get to the pre-proposals, we know as a group, as SAG, what a good full proposal looks like because we've talked about them for a day and a half. And we've talked about what makes a good workshop proposal. So when we see the pre-proposals, it becomes kind of clear whether or not you have a good idea that will translate well into a full, the workshop and then the full proposal, right? So you have to have all those types of things: world-class site, world-class science questions, a skeletal team at least of who's going to lead this project, and do you have enough expertise? This can be also done in the workshop phase, but you have to get past the pre-proposal phase to kind of convince the SAG that you're ready to go forward and have a lot of the some of the major thinking of a project done in terms of the idea, what questions are you going to ask, and so forth. And so I think there are some really exciting pre-proposal proposals that we read, and we comment on them so that you can write the workshop proposal. If you don't have any follow-up questions, I'll go ahead and maybe some of this will explain further. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody? Okay. All right. So pre-proposals that we're talking about is the sort of the first step. And so what is this pre-proposal supposed to achieve? Well, it's supposed to, as Steve mentioned, it's supposed to kind of lay out this scientific idea. So what is it that you want to do? Why do you need to drill? Is where you want to drill the right place to look at this particular question? What kind of societal impact will that have? How does it fit into the ICDP science plan? And do you have the skeletal kind of outline of what you want to do and who's going to do it, right? So is your team being assembled so that it reflects ICDP's requirement that you have a strong international team and so forth? So this is sort of the groundwork that you're laying for a successful proposal. And then the next ones are the workshop proposals. And so workshop proposal should convince SAG that you have kind of done your homework, that you got things in place in terms of hosting a workshop to plan for a drilling proposal that has all the right people that you want to invite, right, for collaboration and input. That's one. Also, again, a better developed plan into what you actually want to do with the drilling in terms of questions and what you want to answer. But note that in the workshop itself is where a lot of this gets honed, right? So in the workshop is where you ask your participants, like, okay, what are the key questions? How are we going to address them? Who's going to do the work? and so on. How are you going to integrate as a team? All those really important things. So in a workshop proposal, you really need to kind of go the next step and kind of, as I said, convince SAG that you're ready to do this, right? That you're ready to have a international workshop, typically at the location you're drilling, not always, and to enable you to write the full proposal. And then finally, the full proposal is the whole thing. So a full proposal lays it all out, not a lot of pages, I might add, but is a succinct plan for your drilling project that includes all the things, costs, budget, management, and pulls it all together in a very cohesive and coherent drilling proposal. Next one. Okay, so just to reiterate, one thing that wasn't necessarily stressed is SAG, which is the Scientific Advisory Group. We review all three of these type of proposals, the pre, the workshop, and the full, but only SAG reviews the pre-proposals. So those don't go up to the next level to the EC. So it's reviewed by SAG, sent to, and not sent to EC. We write up a full recommendation, whether you should go forward to a workshop or whether you should resubmit the pre-proposal. So it's the same template for review. It just doesn't go up to the next level. The next level at the workshop phase, SAG recommends funding because it involves money to the EC, the executive committee. And then that gets presented to the EC by the SAG chairs. And then the EC discusses it and then has the final approval of whether the workshop will get funded. Same thing with the full proposals. I should mention here that it's stated that you really, it is in the ICDP guidelines that you have to have an ICDP workshop before having a full proposal. There are exceptions to this. You can write to ICDP and ask for an exemption, but it has to be a very good reason, and it gets reviewed. Your request gets reviewed by SAG and by ICDP to allow you to do that. But very rarely, and I'll just say again, 7 years of reading proposals, I will say skipping the actual ICDP workshop usually doesn't benefit you. And the reason is because if you have an ICDP workshop, that means somebody from ICDP attends your workshop and helps you and helps with the drilling planning, right? So all the things that Thomas and his group look at, the OSG, to help you put together your risk plan, your drilling, all those technical aspects. You can kind of tell full drilling proposals that don't have an ICDP sponsored workshop versus those that do, because the ones that have the ICDP workshop have the actual technical stuff that a lot of times if you have a Magellan workshop or some other kind of workshop, they don't have. And that's one of the reasons why we went to requiring an ICDP workshop for a full drilling proposal. So some people kind of question that, like, well, it's going to delay us another year. Well, the problem is with that is that you're going to be delayed a year anyway, because your chances for getting your full proposal funded is lower, just from history. Next slide. Okay, really quickly. So all pre-proposals should have a cover sheet. So all ICDP proposals have these cover sheets. The maximum page limit for this particular proposal is 10 pages. So you've got A4 paper or letter paper for those of us in the US, 11-point font, don't go over the margins, that sort of stuff. You have to have a 2-page CV for all the PIs that are listed on your cover sheet, and there's a template for that. The proponents should note, as I mentioned before, why is this project important? What's its global significance? Okay, why this particular site? What are the questions? Any existing drilling relevant data. So sometimes you'll have a site survey done. Sometimes you'll have old data. Anything that could be presented is helpful. If you don't have these things, it's really critical to have a plan of how you're going to acquire them, because this is a critical element to a successful drilling proposal. And then following the SAG reviews, the PI receives, or as I mentioned before, this detailed assessment of the recommendations of how we think you should go about writing your workshop proposal. Okay, so you'll get the reviews back usually late spring, so April to May, gives you plenty of time to hit the January 15th deadline for a workshop proposal. Next one. Okay, so the review criteria are similar to all the different proposals, but there's fewer of them. So quality of science, need for drilling, qualification of proponents, and societal relevance. Those are all the really critical things that we look for in a pre-proposal. So I've mentioned all these before. I won't go through them all again, but the qualification of the proponents, I would focus in a little bit on this one. You don't have to have your team completely assembled at the pre-proposal phase, true, because sometimes you can use the workshop to pull together your complete group. So say you don't necessarily have a deep biosphere person on board, but yet there's a deep biosphere component to your project. Do you need to have them in your proponents? No, but you need to have maybe a little bit of a discussion as to how you're going to go about looking for somebody like that. You're going to invite, so and so and so and so and so to the workshop. Same thing with the questions. So these are your basic questions. This is the science we want to address. And do you need to have all your hypotheses listed in the pre-proposal? No, because it's expected that kind of work will be the focus or a focus of the workshop. So, so it's kind of a fine line between, the more groundwork you do in the pre-proposal, however, helps you downstream when you're trying to write your workshop and full proposal. So that's just an observation, I guess, of mine over the years. Also tie in the societal relevance, like why is this important to the society? As we evolve as a scientific community, we realize that our science, and if you read the science plan for ICDP, has a strong lens of societal relevance. So make sure you think about that and address it, even at the pre-proposal stage. Next one. Okay, in the workshop proposal, so this is a picture of a typical workshop. This is, I believe, Addis Ababa. So this is the add-on workshop from
23.
a year ago. Mm-hmm. So this was a hybrid workshop, online and also in person. So you can notice there's a lot of people there. So the workshops are expected to be very diverse, bringing all these people in that could possibly be part of the project. So this is your opportunity to really flesh out your ideas and the team, the science team, for writing the actual proposal. Next one. So what should it contain? So as before, cover sheet, of course. But the proposal text, you've got an extra 5 pages. So you've got 15 pages. You also need a list of references, and you need these CVs, which they're, again, please follow the template for the PIs. If this is a revised proposal, which we get a lot of those, we expect to see a letter that would be a clear response to any previous SAG comments. I say this is your grand opportunity, because this is usually in the front of addressing SAG and saying, we recognize that, you know, you commented on this, this, and this, and these are the things that we changed in this version of the proposal, in this new proposal, that specifically addresses SAG's comments from our prior proposal. Do not skip this step. Do not short shrift this step. It's a really important aspect. And again, this will be read first. So, you know, when I'm reading a proposal, you read the cover page and then you open it up. There's this letter saying, we appreciate SAG's comments, blah, blah, blah. And these are the ways in which we've addressed SAG's comment and bullet point them or number them, and specifically say how you address them. So this, I think, is your golden opportunity to do that. Next one. Okay, so in a workshop proposal, you need to talk specifically about the science objectives. Again, realizing that some things get honed in the workshop, but SAG has to have a fairly clear idea of what the actual science that that's supposed to be done is going to happen. You need to explain a little bit about the drilling site and the research goals and why it's globally important. We talked about that earlier. Societal relevance, we just discussed that with respect to the pre-proposals, but extra important here in the workshop. Expected science outcomes, preliminary list of the workshop participants. Now, this is really important because we actually do look through this list. And if everybody's from the same countries, say the same 2 or 3 countries, maybe 2 countries, we'll be like, hey, you know, you really need to expand your list. Or if you're working in, say you're working in Africa, you could ask, you know, where are the African participants? You know, if you're going to have your thing in Malawi or whatever, where are your Malawian colleagues? So pay attention to that. Any specific technical issue that you think will need to be addressed in the workshop, make sure that that gets included. And then please, please, please write spend a little bit of time and think about the structure and the agenda of the workshop. So oftentimes we're reading through this, okay. And then you read through the agenda and you're like, clearly they haven't thought about what they're, we're going to give them however many thousands of dollars to pull all these people together, often send them overseas, very complicated, what are they going to talk about? So make sure you spend a little bit of time thinking this through, because it is important. Also, there's a lot to include here. Summarize plan strategy. So the strategy should be addressing your objectives. So kind of give us a quick rundown of sort of the sample strategy, downhole measurements, those sort of things. Again, these can get honed at the workshop, but you should have a better idea, at least at the workshop phase, of what you need to talk about in your workshop. Describe the proposed drilling and site survey data that you might need. Include the budget, obviously. Make sure that's very clear. And then describe relationships of drilling projects or supplemental science investigations to other programs, geoscience programs. So if it's like a, say it's a geohazards thing, do you have a seismic network that you're, collaborating with, that sort of thing. And then finally, your relationship with other proposals. The ICDP has a lovely website. It is really, really great. They have everything organized according, you can search things by region, you can search things by topic, you can search things by project name. Do your homework and make sure if you're planning to drill, you want to drill whatever, wherever, look around and see if there was a prior, maybe it was back 20 years ago and you don't even know about it. But are there other projects that that you need to know about? And what is the relationship between your project and that project? So just be aware of that and maybe just make note of it in your proposal. Next slide. Last but not least, so this is what everybody's driving for, the full proposal. So in the full proposal, next slide, you get 20 pages. So this is a maximum. Now I will stop right there and I will say, okay, 20 pages is your max, okay? That means that all the things, all the important elements of your proposal needs to go into that 20 pages. In the past, we've had people who have decided to put really important stuff that they couldn't put into the 20 pages of their proposal into appendices. Don't do that. Not only does it make SAG upset, sometimes very upset, it doesn't do you any favors, because what you need to be able to do at this stage is really be able to characterize your proposal in 20 pages succinctly with the kind of information that SAG needs to really evaluate whether you have the right team together, you have the right questions, you're working at the right site, you have a good outreach an education plan, whether you have a good site survey data, all the things that you're going to need to have a successful drilling project. And you should be able to do that in 20 pages. The supplements or the appendices are only for very specific things. So do not put content into your appendices. That's really, really, really important. All right, so 20 pages, you get a list of references that doesn't count for the 20. You keep your 2-page curriculum vitae for your PIs. Note that you have a maximum of 14 people listed as PIs and co-PIs. So you have principal investigators that are 4, and then you have something called a co-investigator that's 10. So you can have 14 people listed on your cover page. We pay attention to that. We look at the country representation because you're supposed to have internationality in your science team. We look at gender diversity. We look at a lot of different aspects of that front page. So
Career
pay
status.
attention to it. Sorry?
You also look for the career status, that you involve a lot of
Yes.
early careers are involved. That's
Yes.
also very important for ICDP.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, so we look at diversity of career stage and all those different things. We do look at who's going to be doing this work, okay? And it's important, and it's right there on the cover sheet. You need a detailed budget, okay? And importantly in this, 2 drilling quotes. And say you're working in an area and you know the driller and you have this fantastic driller lined up. Perfect. Do you need the second quote? Yes. Why? Not just because it's a requirement, but because what happens if, God forbid something happens to this other company or driller? You need to have a backup, right? And you also need to convince us that first driller that you have this lovely relationship with is still the best choice. Okay. If you have trouble getting 2 quotes, then you can reach out to ICDP and ask, perhaps there are other people who have had projects in the area that know of good drillers. They have obviously a lot of experience, over 60 projects, plus all the stuff in the pipeline. So you can reach out and use their expertise. Please make the quotes. Okay, bye, Stefan. Please let us know if you have any other questions, okay? Okay, just with the drilling quotes, please make sure they're in English. Sometimes quotes have come to us in other languages that we don't understand, and it's very hard to, even with things like Google Translate, understand what the budget's what the drilling quotes for. Have a detailed technical plan and permitting plan, any type of list of authorities that are needed for that particular project. Next one.
Getting more and more.
So yeah, long list. So detailed drilling, testing, and logging schedule. So that's important. Project management plan. If you're like us in the US and you try to go for big money to do these large drilling projects, you're going to need this anyway. What this would be some kind of project management, like a Gantt chart, which would tell you not just the timeline, but who's going to be doing what and when, and who's going to be doing the overall project management, who's going to be doing on-site versus sampling versus all the different aspects. So you could do this as a flow chart, a Gantt chart, a combination of them. You can also do what's really very effective is a simple matrix with your hypothesis you're testing, what your samples are going to be look like, who's going to sample, where it's going to be tested. So some kind of matrix to explain very clearly who's going to be doing what and how it's tied to the overall project goals. That ties also with the site survey. So you need to describe available site survey data and any new site survey data that will be collected. And also it ties in with this data and sample management plan. There are training courses for this through ICDP, very important. And again, don't short shrift this or don't shortchange this aspect. It's really important. Some of these samples get used today, even though they were from drilling projects 20, 30 years ago. Education outreach plan, again, super important, especially in today's kind of climate in terms of working with indigenous peoples at a drill site, or and there are excellent examples of drilling projects that have done a superb job in this area. You can reach out, you can do this in the workshop, but go on the ICDP website, follow them on Facebook. A lot of times they'll have some of these, outreach events and programs. Take care in this aspect of your proposal development. Risk matrix, super important. And then, again, this is a chance in your letter to have a response to all the side comments. That goes at first. So if this is a revision of a previous drilling proposal, put all your comments and all how you address all of SAG's recommendations in that first letter. Super important. Next one. Okay, so review criteria for full drilling, quality of science, need for drilling, qualification of proponents, societal relevance, budget, responsiveness. What responsiveness means is what I just talked about in terms of how you responded to SAG's previous recommendations. That is a really important element. So quality of science, we've talked about that, why it's important. Is the project a world-class site, world-class opportunity, and a critical question that aligns with ICDP's science plan? Need for drilling. Do you need to drill here? And you know the rest. So qualification of proponents. Make sure your team, if you're going to do deep biosphere I don't mean to pick on deep biosphere, but if you're going to have somebody that does that, make sure that person is integrated into the team. Don't just add people on to kind of check a box, okay? Societal relevance, we talked about that in the budget. Okay, next one. Technical feasibility, adequacy of site characterization, cost effectiveness, project organization, and data and sample management plan. So these are all other things that we specifically, when we sit around the table in our review panel, we literally have each one of these criteria as a discussion topic for each proposal. So each reviewer that presents the proposal to the group comments on this, and we have a discussion around it. So technical feasibility is obviously critical. The ICDP Operational Support Group, or OSG, that Thomas is now head of, will help you in this aspect. Site characterization, make sure that if you have seismic data of your site, make sure we can read it. Make sure that it, we do have people whose expertise is in that area who do comment on this directly. Cost effectiveness, obviously, that's important. Project organization. This can even mean where you're going to open the cores. Okay. Are you going to open the cores on site? How are you doing this? So the project organization is convince SAG and convince EC, but convince SAG that you know what you're doing in terms of if you're given the money and you given the green light, that you will have a plan in place to do the work. And that includes the sample and data management plan as well. Next slide.
I think we had the geothermal proposals already, so then to see.
Yeah, so we didn't mention this earlier, but if you are in a research area that affords you the ability to do marine to continent or ocean to continent drilling transects, we do have a cooperative agreement with IODP. It's a program called Land to Sea, L2S. There is a whole process for proposals that have this component. And what it is the IODP and the ICDP review, we co-review these proposals, and the project gets developed within both communities with IODP and ICDP. So if you have an onshore and offshore component sites, we have a number of these projects now in development. This is an exciting opportunity to partner with our ocean drilling colleagues. Next one. So what does this mean in all practicality? If you are involved in this at all, you need to submit a preliminary proposal, a workshop proposal, and a full proposal. The preliminary proposals go to us initially, to SAG, to ICDP. Once they're going to get co-reviewed by ICDP and then IODP. Unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, our meetings are somewhat staggered. So ICDP gets it first, and then IODP reviews it. If it gets the green light in both ICDP and IODP, you get to write a workshop proposal, and there's no deadline for that, although it is submitted to ICDP. And then from there on, the whole process is kind of fused. And so there's one workshop proposal, there's one full proposal that gets submitted, and that actually has to follow the IODP guidelines for October. So this is a really, like I said, it's a new thing. We have some projects that if you're interested in doing this, we can point you to those PIs to talk about their experience. But we're really proud of this this unique opportunity. Next slide. Here's a kind of a flow chart. I'm not sure this helps that much, but the arrows and the bubbles. But you start with, if you look at the beginning, you've got the pre-proposal in the middle and workshop and full. That's the second line. Submit to ICDP in the line below. You get this joint review. You do the workshop. You get the joint review, and then you submit the last one to the IODP, and then essentially you go forward. We have had the case where proposals have been put forward to us where maybe we like the the offshore component better than the onshore, and where we work that out. So, all projects are kind of, unique in their, which is what science is all about, right? And so we understand that this process might be unique to each project. So if you're interested, contact Tomas or anybody from SAG, me or Steve, Sherry, talk more about this. Next slide.
And here's the workshop coming into place.
Yeah.
So
The workshop is the green. I think the yellow is the pre-proposal.
exactly, the yellow is the the green is the
is
workshop, and the red is the full.
I did not draft this diagram, so all right, next slide. All right, so we're gonna open it up to questions. If anybody has any questions from the first part. It was a lot of information. Hopefully it's helpful information.
Helen.
Yeah.
I'm obviously interested in the lake drilling document that you have that's currently in review. And I just wondered what the timeline for that was with respect to proposals that are getting submitted, hopefully for the January 15th deadline, because are we working towards integrating with that document?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I included it today, because I know several people have asked me about it. It's currently in review. Hopefully we'll get it revised and ready to go by the end of this month. So it'll be in place hopefully by November. And then we'll have it to discuss also for anybody attending AGU. But it will definitely go in place for the January 15 deadline. So yeah, the sum of the ideas I presented to you, the text actually isn't that much more than what I explained. All it's meant to do is be sort of guidance in terms of kind of targets and prioritization, so that when you're developing, I point people to this map of all the different lake drilling projects. And so from an ICDP standpoint, to further our understanding of, it's usually number 4, the theme 4, the environmental change. What new information are we going to get from drilling that particular lake basin? And is it going to cover a critical time interval that we don't have a lot of information? Is it going to cover a certain latitudinal or longitudinal gap where, if we had the right records, we could look for latitudinal gradients and test different aspects of I don't know, hydrologic regimes through time, or I'm just spitballing here, but also longitudinal. We don't have a lot of longitudinal, so looking at east-west things. Also altitude. We don't have that many high altitude drilling sites, so that might be something that could be targeted. And then finally, the continuity, looking for those people that are doing particular lake drilling projects, looking at how their age models and proxies might line up with prior projects would be kind of important. So, and also the continuity of the record. Can they get seasonal data? Especially in a deeper time record would be particularly important. So I guess the big thing is what makes this project unique compared to all the other lake drilling projects that have happened. And I should say, I'm super proud of all these records we've drilled. It's amazing, because when ICDP started, there weren't that many lake records, and it's taken a couple decades now to put together this wealth of information we have from lake basins around the world, and lake records from around the world. So the question going forward is how do we capitalize on that, number one, but number two, what new information do we need from specific lake basins that is different than what we already know? And maybe I'll point to Steve and Sherry to maybe comment on this further, if you have comments.
No, I think you covered that nicely. Nicely, Lisa.
Comments from Sherry?
No, it's the same. The most important thing in there is that those priority areas that are in this document. So this will be recorded and you can review those few slides that were on the lake document. So I don't think there's more critical information until it's actually released in a month.
Thank you.
Yeah, we tried to get it out before GSA, and it just didn't happen, but it will be done before the end of October. Do we have more slides, Thomas?
We do, and if you want, I can continue with the next slides.
Yeah, if you want.
Yeah, sure. And thank you. And well, part 2, ICDP, important proposal elements. And before I'm switching to the next slide, I think the important message here, the most important element in a proposal is the science. If the science is not convincing in your ICDP proposal, your proposal will not fly. And that's also the reason why we have these pre-proposals, because this is really focusing on the science. All the operational aspects we're going to hear later about, and we heard a little bit about already. That's things that can be somehow fixed. But if your science is not convincing, you won't get that fixed. So the science is probably the most important element in any ICDP proposal. We are science-driven. A little bit on the specific aspects here, the role of PIs in ICDP proposals. Because I mentioned the ICDP membership and the member countries, pre- and workshop proposals can be submitted from PI teams from any country. It does not need to be a PI team from an ICDP member country. And they will be handled without any restrictions. The situation is a little bit different when it comes to the full proposals, because the full proposals, they can also be submitted from PI teams with a lead PI from a non-ICDP member country. They will be evaluated, and they might be even getting approval, but, and here's the but, no financial and operational support will be provided until ICDP membership of the respective country is achieved. So here is the point. For the pre and the workshop proposals, no matter where you're coming from or the PI team is coming from, go for it if the science is convincing. And also for the workshop proposal, of course, the first logistical aspects are convincing. For the full proposal, we would like that the PIs, the leading PIs, are from ICDP member countries. And if that's not the case, you may get an approval from ICDP that helps you to go to your potential funding agency. Look, ICDP is willing to give us money, but we are not ICDP member. So please think about that. Of course, if you plan to drill in a non-ICDP member country, you should consider to include in your PI team scientists from that country, because otherwise you will probably get quite a lot of problems to get local acceptance, to get all the permits and these things. So you need to involve people from the country you are drilling in. As Lisa already mentioned, the number of PIs is limited to 4 PIs and up to 10 co-PIs. And also mentioned already was that PI and co-PI team should reflect that high degree of diversity, of career stage, nationality, and gender. And in order to give you a little bit of help to understand how these proposals are reviewed, I compare here the ICDP proposal review with the review of a scientific paper. And even if you're not familiar with submitting ICDP proposals, you're very likely familiar with submitting a scientific paper. If a scientific paper is accepted in the ICDP world, that would mean ICDP proposal is approved. For minor revisions, ICDP may, when you receive a paper, receive your review and the editors decide minor revisions, that's when ICDP would say, please provide an addendum. Then there are moderate to major revisions in a paper. Here you're invited to resubmit a revised proposal to the next ICDP deadline. And, well, rejected, of course, would be rejected. You should note that a proposal may be submitted as many times as you wish, as long as it is not finally rejected. We had already the formal aspects, and one point I just want to mention again here, that no science should, or no content should be provided in the appendix. No science in the appendix is a very important rule in the ICD. There are some other points here. You should submit it as a single PDF document. So please do not create a portfolio of PDF documents. Send us one single PDF document to the email mentioned here, proposal submission at icdp-online.org. We heard about the proposal cover sheet and this kind of aspects related to the letter size and the typo, the font size, these things. If your proposal is bigger than 10 megabyte, let us know before, and we arrange some way to submit it to us. And again, deadline for all proposals is always January 15. That's an example from the cover sheet. You have to fill that out. You can download the cover sheet, of course, also on the ICDP website. Make sure that you, if you submit a proposal, that you use the latest cover sheet. Do not, let's say, take a cover sheet that was circulating around in the community maybe some years ago or so. Go to the ICDP website and download the latest cover sheet. There are some, let's say, general considerations when you submit a proposal. This is a kind of a strategic, let's say, hint that you should think about. Workshop proposals and also the full proposals. The workshop proposals need approval by SAC and EC. The full proposals by SAC, EC, and AOG. And in the latter two, the EC and the AOG, all ICDP member countries are represented with one vote. And in that case, it should be clear that the more scientists from different member countries are involved in your proposals, the better it might be for you. That also helps you to raise the additional funds, because if you have more different countries involved, scientists from these countries, they can go to their funding agencies, which will help you to get the matching funds. What we expect as an output from an ICDP funded workshop would be a publication of a workshop report. And that can be done in the Scientific Drilling Journal, which is the program journal of IODP and ICDP. And if you have submitted a workshop proposal and you want to go, a workshop report to a Scientific Drilling, you should either mention it, and if there's a chance to add it to your proposal, you can also add it as an appendix in your full proposal. And consider one thing. Not all ICDP panel members are experts in your subject area of the proposal. And make sure that the abstract is readable and understandable by non-experts. And also a catchy project logo can help to create a positive momentum. That's the first thing people see when they read the abstract. They read the abstract and see the logo. So a catchy logo and an understandable and readable abstract is really helpful to create a positive momentum. And in any case, you have to create something like that, because later you will probably we have to reach out to the public and to the general public. And for that, you will have to have an understandable abstract and also a catchy logo. These are mentioned already, the education and outreach, and that ICDP projects, they're a great opportunity for students to be trained. They are a great opportunity for community outreach, so doing outreach in museums or other platforms for exhibitions. And you should consider something like video or a film in your proposal. You should mention on-site educational activities and prepare some education modules. Website and social media is something you should consider. And of course, if the local stakeholders are indigenous people, clearly plan on how they will be incorporated into your project. The local acceptance is really something important. And ICDP projects, and that's also something important for ICDP, we would like to see that local stakeholders are involved in the project. We spoke about the site surveys a little bit, and the site surveys, they should be detailed enough to capture the subsurface of the drilling target. And this is criteria in evaluating the feasibility of your project. So it's important for the panels that you have a very detailed and a let's say, clear site survey. And if the data that you're using for the site survey, they are, let's say, for instance, industrial data, and you want to make sure that they're not getting published or not getting shown, let's say, spread around to other people, state that in your proposal. And we need in the site survey also adequate resolution to really identify the best possible target for your drilling project in the site survey data. We spoke already about these criterions which are important for a successful ICDP proposal. The global criterion, and just go quickly through that here. The message here is world-class science at world-class sites. The international criterion should be international in scope in order to choose the very best targets, to optimize scientific deals, and to pool technology, and also, I mentioned already, financial resources. The need for drilling. If your scientific targets can, or if your scientific idea can also be, let's say, can be answered, addressed by other methods than drilling, then ICDP will probably not consider your proposal, because drilling is expensive, and so we have really to keep our money for those projects who really need drilling to address their targets. Depth to cost. Well, your drilling project or your drilling plan should be in line also with, let's say, budget realities. Social needs, or societal needs, that's already mentioned, should give preference. ICDP will give preference to projects that have clear relevance to societal needs, such as energy, mineral resources, hazards, and we heard about that. And there is this active process criterion that ICDP would put more emphasis on the study of active rather than ancient systems. This is not the highest criterion if you would consider this one as a kind of a priority list here. So the drilling project should focus on drilling activities in active systems rather than in ancient systems. We had these things already, so I don't need to go through that. We heard about the drilling quotes. That is important that you have 2 quotes. The quotes must be in English, and they all need to be complete and understandable. And without the 2 quotes, your proposal will not be considered to be complete. If you need support in this field, contact us. We just had recently one PI team coming and reaching out to us and asking us if we could give advice to other drilling companies in their specific region where they can ask for additional quotes. We can help with that. We have that expertise here in our team. Lisa mentioned already that there is a cover letter necessary for all resubmissions that addresses in detail all the changes that were made and how the issues which were, let's say, pointed out or raised by SAC and EC were addressed. So there are some technical information that is, or some, let's say, logistical information that is really important and needed in the proposal. And one of them is this drilling risk assessment and the health, safety, and environmental plan. And our drilling engineer would like to see the following keywords addressed. And not just our drilling engineer, also other people would like to see that. But I would, because we spoke already about some of these points here, that important is that you have a risk assessment, a drilling engineering program and project management plan, an abandonment plan. What happens with your borehole after the drilling? The equipment, accessories, rig size. Do you need a blowout preventer for your drilling? Again, 2 drilling quotations. The drilling budget is very important. We have to want to see a list with the costs for the drilling, the monitoring, abandonment, the completion costs. If your drilling project includes coring, Also, a coring plan should be part of your proposal. What equipment will be used, how the cores are stored, how they are transported, any budget for all these things you want to do with the core, and maybe also a quote. Environmental licenses, so you need to have permits, or you have at least to have a permitting plan in hand in your full proposal. And also how to address potential environmental concerns. Completion plan, what happens with, for instance, drilling mud, and disposal management plan and strategy, and operations quality control and plan, health, safety, and environment. That includes also a medical evacuation plan, security, and drilling and completion data management. You're using software for that, or the drilling company will use a software for that. Which software? We would like to know. So for the risk matrix, there are general risks and there are drilling related risks. And you see here, for instance, for the general risks, I'm not going through all the points here. Things like delays due to, for instance, weather, cost overrun, understaffing, unexpected geology, and things like that. Although I would see unexpected geology more put into the drilling risks. But anyway, so we would like to see the risk matrix where you describe the risk, its likelihood, how it will impact your drilling, and a mitigation strategy. And how this mitigation strategy will change the likelihood, the impact, and the potential of the risk. The same for the drilling risks. In this case here, for instance, they made it based on depth. So they said the first 50 meters we're drilling and installing a conductor casing. And the risk, for instance, here, it could be that we are running into hard rock boulders, and what to do in this case, and if the bit performance is not very good because we're running in this kind of formation here, what to do. And for instance, here the preventive actions would be to drill a pilot hole, a very small diameter, just to see the lithology of the first 50 meters, and then go and decide which bit you want to use here. Also here, for each potential risk, we would like to see a scenario, how to evaluate it, so prevent actions, likelihoods, and the risk classification between negligible or from negligible, or low, moderate, and high. In case you have other ICDP proposals on hand, do not copy and paste the risk matrix from other proposals. We would like to see for each project individual and adapt to the proposal a risk matrix. We also have a risk matrix in our brochure, which is called the primer. And we often see just proposals copying it out of the primer and put it in the proposal. This is not a good idea. And some ideas about the budget and management plan, I took that out from other proposals, from ICDP proposals, from successful ICDP proposals, and that just should give you an idea, a glimpse on how other proposals have handled that. So for developing a budget management plan, for instance, they broke down from a general scientific goal to concrete scientific questions. Then they break down the scientific questions to the investigations. Then they created a logging program based on the sampling program. And based on that one, they could estimate the requirements. And from this one, they can calculate the time. And with the time, they can also calculate the costs. And such a logging plan may look like this. So you have here your borehole, in that case, a 6 kilometer deep one, it's a pretty deep one. And you have a logging plan here, you have a sampling program. Here we're taking cuttings, here we're taking core. What we're doing with the core, once we have it, we're doing MSCL, multi-sensor core logging, or we're using an optical scanner, and so on and so forth. And based on this, you can calculate the human resources that you would need for that one. And then with this human resources, you can also calculate the time and then the final costs. I think that was also mentioned by Lisa. You mentioned, I think, the CPM method to help you to develop a time plan. I saw that in some proposals. And at the end, this is an example or a good example how such a time plan may look like. You have, for instance, here a plan, proposal submitted, then you get the decision from ICDP, then maybe you have to submit an addendum, then the final, let's say, ICDP decision, and then all these aspects like pre-mobilization, mobilization, drilling, demobilization, core splitting, and so on and so forth. And here it's important, you also have a plan B. So just in case that here there are any delays for whatever reasons, that you have a plan B to say, okay, if we have a delay here for 1 year, we're starting 1 year later. This is an example of a very detailed budget and management plan for the drilling, so a plan for the drilling costs. So you have a very detailed cost plan here. And if you would read and go through that, you probably will not understand every item which is mentioned here. And slotted liner, when they're speaking, for instance, about slotted liner here, I, for instance, know that they're speaking about the geothermal project here. Get in touch with us. Get in touch with the ICDP Operational Support Group if you want to create or need to create such a drilling plan and a cost plan. We can help you with that. We are not writing the proposal for you, but we can give you some advice. Also, as part of the budget and management plan, it's good to have an overview about the roles and responsibilities of the PIs, of the PI team, and if there are additional people having such a role in the proposal and in the project later, you should mention them as well. This is an example here from a project, from the SafeWord project here. You see here the 3 PIs having their different tasks and yeah, you see the different tasks here. And you see also a scientific advisory board here on the right-hand side. That means there is an advisory board that consists of experts in the field of drilling. It's not the ICDP people, and they can help you with advice once it comes to decisions that PIs have to make when the drilling is going on. This is very important because you're probably not really an expert in drilling, but you probably need at a certain time making decisions, and the drilling company will reach out to you and say, look, we need to decide, do we go this way and that way or that way? And in that case, it's very good to have a science advisory board to give you advice, because if this is an advisory board, there are drilling experts sitting, they can really give you the right advice. The outreach plan. Please check if and how are the following keywords, I don't want to say buzzwords, are addressed in the full proposal. Local community outreach, the use of social media, activities in museums, press and media work, considering maybe a press conference at your site. You see actually a press conference, or let's say an interview at the drill site. Consider maybe an open house, the drill site open house, to invite the local communities, video or other media, some plans for capacity building, talks at universities and schools, And please do consider an outreach budget in your proposal. The data and sample management. Also here, there are some points that are relevant in your proposal. You should have a plan for on-site operation setup and a workflow for your samples. A sample and data manager should be named and pointed. You should have a budget for on-site sampling and core handling in your complete budget or in your full budget. And plan for sampling party would be good, also including a budget. The data management software, the MDIS, so this mobile drilling information system, which is a software provided by ICDP. You should have a plan and a budget for the training of this MDIS. And you should have also a plan on reporting. We would like, after the project, see an operational report, also a science report. And you may consider also a post-drilling workshop, a post-project workshop, which is a post-drilling workshop. Your data and sample management plan should describe the financial means and resources are needed during the operational phase for the data and sample management. You should have a data and sample manager at the site, and the plan should include budgets for human resources, hardware, transport of devices. If you want to have the core scanner from ICDP or other equipment, consider shipping costs in your budget, in your proposal budget. Downhole logging is the same, and you should also have a downhole logging plan. If you think that downhole logging is not relevant for your proposal, and that might be the case, please explain in detail why. And you may get in touch with us, with the operational support group, with our logging team, with Jochen Kück. And if you have good and convincing reasons to say, well, we have no need for downhole logging for that and that and that and that reason, and you mention that also later in the proposal, that's okay. But generally, you should have a logging plan. And also here, there's a list of keywords which should be addressed in the full proposal. You should have a logging plan with schedules, with quotes, with a budget. This budget should include also standby time of the drilling rig and other aspects. Again, get in touch with us and we can help you. And there is our famous primer. This is a document which provides a comprehensive overview on all the operational aspects of ICDP scientific drilling and ICDP drilling projects. The point here is this document now contains of about 200 pages. Nobody wants to read 200 pages. Get in touch with us. I think that's a good idea. And you should, of course, if you have specific questions, go to the primer and read the specific chapter. And so for that reason, it's important to have a primer and know that it exists. And coming now for the reasons to fail, and I think I'm giving the microphone, virtual microphone, back to Lisa and the Science Advisory Group, because I think this is something where you can provide some experience, and you have some experience with.
All right, thank you, Thomas. First, any questions regarding what he went through? So the risk matrix are tricky. I think that, you could make it all red. You could make it all red, who knows? But try to be reasonable, because again, the reason we include this is for your own project development, right? So to try to think through all the aspects of the project so that it's as successful as possible. I'm going to do this collaboratively with Steve and Sherry, but I'll go through the bullet points on the slide, and then we can they can chime in. But just in general, why would a proposal not be successful? Maybe it doesn't comply with the ICDP criteria. We've had that several times. So that could be from a management or an engineering perspective. It could also be from site surveying. It could be any type of thing that it might not hit all the aspects that are outlined in the proposal guidelines in terms of the criteria. So to mitigate this, to address this, the best way to do that, especially if it's technical, is contact Thomas and the OSG group and get help with it, with whatever the problem is. A second thing, maybe hopefully this gets caught at the pre-proposal stage, but the application doesn't provide any kind of novel scientific ideas, or maybe it isn't a world-class site. We've had that issue in the past. It doesn't mean that it can't go on to be a successful drilling project, but funded by someone else, frankly. We've had that actually happen where, SAG just doesn't feel like this is a really world-class objective. The competition can be pretty tight because you are competing in a proposal competition against other projects, and they might all be, the best place to look at something. Look at all the different science objectives in your project. Develop clear hypotheses. This aspect is very highly scrutinized by SAG. We do look at, because that's what we're there for, to look mainly at the science you want to do, how you want to do it, and its relevancy in terms of society. Third reason, not sufficient pre-site survey. So this is also for your benefit. You don't want to drill or develop a big drilling project in a place where you have limited or not sufficient knowledge of what's happening in the subsurface. So that might mean you need to go back and get pre-site or site surveys, and then come back to ICDP for second chance at a full proposal. But this is a really critical step that you need to address. And the last on that slide is that SAG and EC recommendations have been neglected in follow-up proposals. So this goes to the cover letter and whether or not you actually address the things, particularly if it's obviously a resubmittal. But it can also be suggestion. So say SAG gives you the green light to go from a workshop to a full proposal. But in that workshop recommendation, there is a bullet pointed list of SAG saying, okay, your workshop can go ahead, but make sure in the workshop you do this, 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 and this. Maybe it's only 3 things, maybe it's 4 things, or more, or less. But if you don't specifically address those in your full proposal, SAG will notice, because SAG reads all the prior reviews as well as your current proposal. So if you're resubmitting a full proposal, for example, SAG will go back. All the members of SAG, 19 people, will go back and they will reread the recommendation from last time. They will also have access to your prior proposal. They'll have access to your prior workshop proposal and your pre-proposal. So they'll have this whole timeline, this whole project development up to this point. So if you fail to address comments and it's still a problem, SAG will know it and we'll talk about it and we'll comment on it. So just realize that, unlike NSF, for example, where each proposal is considered a new proposal, it's a new start, blah, blah. You don't really see what's happened prior. SAG is the opposite. SAG sees everything from the nascent stage of a proposal to where it is currently in the pipeline. And so it's a very important thing to think about when you're trying to address these comments. Steve and Sherry, do you have anything to add?
Not on those points. I'm not sure what's coming up next.
Okay, we'll go to the next one.
Maybe
Oh,
just
sorry,
on
Sherry.
this one, just
Go
to
ahead.
emphasize the hypothesis testing framework is really important. And so you need to make clear how you're actually going to test your hypotheses, which methods are being used, because it oftentimes is not that clear to somebody that's outside your project.
Yeah, and
That's the only thing I had to ask.
Good point. And I would say in recent times, some of the most effective way to do this is to do what I described with a matrix, right? So you have your hypotheses in one column or whatever, and then you have the data that you're going to collect to test those hypotheses, and then you're going to have the project team or whoever's going to do the work to test the hypotheses. So there's a clear connection between hypotheses, data and methods, and then the PIs who will do the work. So that's been effective in a lot of proposals. Also, like I said, a Gantt chart that if you're not familiar with Gantt charts, there's templates on the internet. You can look those up. But basically a timeline and tasks. And those can also be linked to hypotheses, right? Because that also gets scrutinized. A lot of the people who are on SAG, we didn't really go through the membership, but the people who will be reviewing your proposal are from all the different aspects of science that continental drilling addresses, and a lot of them have prior drilling experience. Not all, but many of them do. So they know they've done this before, or they're in the middle of doing things like this. So they're from the community. So they kind of know what you need to do to be successful on the other end. Next one. Proposal doesn't generate enough scientific impact throughout the PI group. Maybe it's heavy on one aspect and not fully developed in all the different science areas. So maybe you just tag on geothermal, or you tag on, I pick on deep biosphere, but you tag, because it does happen, you tag on deep biosphere, but that part of the project is not as well developed as maybe another part of the project. So the balance has to be there. Missing non-ICDP funding or lack of support of competitors with similar projects. So if you have projects that are similar, you need to do a little bit of groundwork to try to either reach out and get some of those people involved, reach out to more of the funding agencies. Merging projects can work. Anyway, other reasons to fail, this is further down the road, but disagreements within your science team obviously creates a big problem. But that should be dealt with at some level of the project development. Missing coordination with other programs such as IODP. So I mentioned the land to sea. This is a whole new thing for ICDP, IODP. And so there's a lot of coordination that is required. And so you have to coordinate with ICDP and IODP to put your proposals in the right cycle and in the right time. insufficient patience for the timely preparation and lobbying necessary for costly international projects. Okay, so what this means is the timeline on these projects is long, often. We think, a lot of us think too long. But remember too that ICDP has a limited budget. It's about $4 million a year. So the money that they give for supporting ICDP projects is seed money, and it's only for the drilling component. And it's meant to prime the pump, but also I think another part of it is to hone the ideas, hone the team, get all those pieces in place so that you can write proposals to different agencies in different member countries and get the support needed. That takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes persistence. And so the leadership team of each project has to be super committed to getting this done, right? And you need to have, leaders who are, willing to, really persist in this process. Anything to add, Steve and Sherry?
I think I would add just a little bit about the missing non-ICDP funding, because that seems to be becoming a kind of increasing issue. And so a good proposal will have multiple paths to successful additional funding, or should do. So you're not just reliant on getting lucky with the second, third, or fourth funder, but there are various ways for that to happen. That seems to me to be something that's really worth stressing now.
Yeah, and be realistic on that. That's a perfect thing to add. Be realistic. So I used to work at the National Science Foundation in the US. And so sometimes we get proposals that might have USPIs on them, and they're listing all these different programs at NSF. Some of them are not appropriate for continental drilling. Some of them you'd have to hit the trifecta to get them all funded. So you have to also be realistic in how much money you can raise from different sources, because we do look at that. And sometimes we just comment on it, but sometimes it can actually stop a proposal because we think it's unrealistic for success. Anything else you want to add, Sherry? Nope. Okay, next slide. We're in the home stretch.
Yep.
So I'll just take this one. There are resources available on the website. The website, I find, maybe others will disagree, but I find it really helpful. There are best practices brochures, or the primer that Thomas talked of, the proposal guidelines, and then this drilling strategy for geothermal, but also the science plan. And there will be, in the next few weeks, hopefully, the lake drilling plan. And we can also send out links to people who have pending lake projects to just give them the link to the strategy paper so that people have it when it gets released. But a lot of information. This is why it takes, they say it takes a village or whatever. It takes a scientific village to do a successful drilling project. But we've had a lot of success in the past, and a lot of really great science that comes out of these projects. Anything people want to ask or say? Comment? Last comments? Nope, it's been a long session, but we thank you for.
We just have 4 slides left, and maybe for the next slide, I will take over.
Slides?
4 slides left.
Okay.
Because we are sometimes requested if we could provide proposals, successful proposals,
right.
as a blueprint. We cannot do that, and we will not do that.
No.
If you want to know how a successful proposal is looking like, get in touch with the PIs, and they may provide you their proposal. And of course, you may also consider then to include them in your proposal. But do not reach out to ICDP and ask for successful proposal. We cannot provide that.
True.
So don't do this.
Yeah. Don't do it.
We have, for specific questions, how to improve an already existing proposal before the next submission round, we offer Q&A sessions upon request in mid to late November. For that, please provide your proposal maybe 2 weeks before to the OSG and tell us which themes you would like to discuss with us. May it be drilling engineering, might be the outreach plan, might be data and sample management, whatever. So get in touch with us and we can offer a Q&A session by Zoom, and you get some, let's say, information from our side on these aspects that you have mentioned before. And the questions and answers from part 2. Helen, please, the stage is yours.
No, I'm feeling fantastically well supported here. Just a question. I thought your analogy, Thomas, to the of the review process, rather
Yes.
like the review of a paper, really helpful. But are we saying then that if you've submitted a proposal once before and you've had comments on it, in the same way as in a revision to a paper, you would only address those comments and you wouldn't make any changes beyond those bits that were flagged in the review? Is it the same principle for comments back from ICDP? No. So we could get comments on a different area that remained from the original when it goes through a second time. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, well, I know what you mean, that you probably, when you submit a paper, that at a certain point, a totally other reviewer is coming into the game, and then he's bringing up totally new aspects and things like that.
No, I rather meant if you change more than the reviewer has asked for in when you submit a paper, it then becomes, that's essentially a new paper. And so then the journal is obliged to kind of re-review again. I was just kind of assessing where you were on the scheme of that, whether we're to stay focused on the comments that were raised, assuming that they're relatively precise and focused.
No, you should stay and you should focus on the points.
Okay, so we don't necessarily, because if we change too much, then essentially it's a brand new submission as far as you're concerned. So we stick to the points that are raised and respond
exactly.
And provide that letter.
Let me comment on that. So two things. One, you are correct. So SAG goes through these proposals with a fine-tooth comb. We literally, and then we sit around, all of us, and write the review, write the recommendation, word for word. So and the longitude tracking of the different SAG members means that there will be most of the people in the room that have read this, if you do it the next year, that have read this thing before. Okay. And they do remember it. So, but in your case, if you're with this new lake drilling strategy, you might need to change more than what was recommended by SAG.
Okay, thank you.
So I would say order of operations here would be to change the things that SAG recommended, right? Note them in your letter, like these are changes. And there might be a little bit of conflict in step 2. Step 2 would then be look at the strategy paper, maybe make a separate section in your letter saying, addressing the new guidelines, we have done the following. What that will do for SAG is it'll point to where you made the changes from your last proposal that they might be familiar with, right? that is new or changed on your accord based upon the new strategies, the strategy document. Okay.
Cool.
And that will give you a backup and a rationale to SAG, like this is what we changed and this is why we changed it, because of these new guidelines. And I'd make it very clear which ones you're actually responding to make SAG's job in handling the proposal as easy as possible. Sherry and Steve, you're going to be doing this. I'm off, but what do you think about that advice?
Seems wise. No, it seems strategic for the PIs to do that. So yeah, the happier we are, the more likely you are to sail through. So
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that question that Helen was asking about adding new stuff in to a proposal. I mean, essentially, if this is a revised proposal, then the whole thing is going to be reviewed anyway. So I can't see any problem with adding new stuff in, because you're going to have to fully justify it and it's going to be fully reviewed by SAG. So
Yeah.
it's not the same as a journal review in that it's just going to the editors. It's going to every revised proposal will go to the review team completely.
Right. And yeah, so I think to connect these different recommendations is, if whatever you change, right, in your letter, say you out of the blue, you came in contact with this person who's going to do, okay, deep biosphere, and that wasn't in your original proposal, but now you see it as a brilliant opportunity, like, holy cow, this is like really great. And we didn't do that before because we didn't have the right person and it was going to be, not successful. But now, you go to AGU and you found the right person with the right team, and it's just going to work out perfectly. But it wasn't in the original proposal. If you were to add that in, you write that in the letter and why. So that, to Sherry's point, make SAG's job easy and be crystal clear in how you've changed the proposal from the earlier version to the version that you're submitting. And the more you can do that, and in a succinct way, don't write 20 pages of what and then write your 20 page. That will not fly. But succinctly as possible. That would be transparent and helpful to SAG, so that they don't have to sit. What SAG doesn't like, is having to dive in, just like an editor doesn't like to dive in and have to churn it all again and sit there with two competing copies and figure out what was changed and where it was changed, and that's a big mess. So, do that and it'll make it very clear how things have changed.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I realize that that's like a really difficult question for you to answer in this generic kind of context.
I can give a little comment on that, because when it comes to an addendum that you are requested to provide an addendum, generally these addenda are requested when it comes to logistical aspects. You have to improve the budget plan or some other logistical aspects. If you're invited to submit an addendum, I would not recommend in that case to touch the science again. If the addendum is for logistical aspects, don't touch the science again. Because in that case, the EC that receives the addendum may say, okay, but you have changed the science. In that case, it needs to go back to the ZAC, and then you have to wait.
Yeah.
So don't do that.
Yeah.
In her case, the issues were also with other things. Right.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's helpful.
All right. We're here to help. And some of us will be at AGU, if you are, or if someone from your team is. And trying to think of any other personal contact before the January 15th deadline. I would take advantage of the open access in November with ICDP to kind of clarify some things. By that time, the lake drilling strategy will be on the street and released, and you can ask more specific questions.
Okay, that's going to get a bit tight if that's being released in November, and then we've got to get a proposal in 2 weeks before. So as long as we can, yeah, we might have to. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
You have sort of the top lines.
Sure. Thank you, and I really appreciate it. Very helpful.
Okay, thank you all. Again, this will be archived on the ICDP website. I guess that's it. Happy German Unification Day to all who celebrate.
Thank you so much.
We all celebrate it. Anyway.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Ciao, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And we stay in touch. Laila, you please stay in the line because we have to make sure that we get the video.